So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital
Today we're going to
revolution.
be talking about the unequivocal fact that HR is not your friend. This isn't a dismissive, and that's part of the problem. People use HR is not your friend as a dismissive for the department. They say, well, yeah, they're not your friend. You shouldn't talk to them, or they won't help you, so on and so forth. And HR isn't your friend. It's a department of a business, no different from marketing, contracts, sales, procurement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is simply a department of the business created to either make or reduce losses of the business. And that's all it is. I don't, the idea that calling the HR department not your friend is somehow a dismissive is silly. It's an unbelievable fact, and it's true. So yeah, I don't really understand this concept. Um, I'll get started. I saw this one. It says HR doesn't even really limit liability. If your boss stole your wage and you go to HR, they can't somehow stop the company from being liable. Right. Yeah. I mean, so the HR doesn't own the company, and that's ultimately where the control is. HR doesn't have an ownership stake in it, and it doesn't make money. So, no, it can't stop a boss from, quote, stealing the wages. That said, any good HR department would, and I'm not seeing one that has had a problem stopping bosses from stealing wages. It's very silly. Um, but in the same breath, this person says they email you once a year when it's time to you can update your healthcare stuff. Well, that in and of itself is a limit of liability because healthcare can often change, so the rules can change, and it's important for HR to be a part of those rule changes and the development of healthcare plans, especially after the Affordable Care Act. So the idea that it doesn't even really limit liability is at least a little bit defeated by the second paragraph, right? Let's get into justice and what it looks like. There's a lot of arguments surrounding whether or not HR can deliver justice, and frankly, HR's justice delivery system is just as flawed as the federal government's, right? We have poor evidence, we have hearsay, and there's a lot of very frustrating circumstances that make it where it's very difficult to terminate someone or hold someone accountable appropriately. We just don't have perfect knowledge. As this person writes, you quote unquote use HR for helping your side and getting your best interest and the company's best interest aligned. However, you have to come with facts and actual laws and actual problems. And that's where I think there's a lot of misconceptions because as someone who's listened to an innumerable amount of people tell me that a law has been broken or that discrimination has taken place, simply the law and the facts don't really match up with that, right? That there isn't supporting documentation for either of those things, for either a law being broken or something of that nature. And that's ultimately the problem with HR. We're somewhat incapable of what we set out to do. We can control what we can control, but within the limits of the evidence and the witnesses, we can do no more when it comes to workplace justice. And we'll get to the final problem with HR, which is, quite frankly, a lot of employees who become HR managers, they start as assistants or secretaries or office managers, and they work their way up. The business gets bigger because it's grown slowly over time, and as a result, as the business has gotten bigger, the hiring needs have been kind of outsourced to the front person, and as that happens, fairly poorly qualified people become the HR manager. And I always say that there's party planning HR and then there's real HR. And I've never been a party planner HR. I think that sort of life is not for me. It's not for me to plan out pizza parties or create birthday parties. For me, HR is where the people in the business meet, and that's where true value is brought, and that's where we should always be, because we are a department. We're not a friend of the people. There's probably a lot to say about this. This was something that I've seen quite a bit recently. It's a silly dismissive. It's one of those that always cracks me up. And I understand. I understand the idea that you go to HR thinking that you have a confidant and someone who is supposed to be on your side, but quite frankly, that's not how it always works, and you're not always right, and that's ultimately the problem, right? I've received too many complaints that were false perceptions, misunderstandings, and quite frankly, unprovable information, and as a result, it's become difficult to help out the people that really need it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think HR is your friend? I hope you don't after this one. But like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.